Back in 1983, a very unique arcade popped up called Dragon's Lair, a game that was unique in specific areas, mainly the fact that it was on a laserdisc. You could say that the laserdisc was a precursor to the DVD and roughly the same size as a vinyl record. The game was essentially an interactive movie, whereas a 27-minute long animation was on the disc, and the player's input would dictate effectively what clips were being played depending on input, and of course, depending on the game's uh, selection of sequences. The game had multiple different sequences, and you wouldn't necessarily get the same sequences playing a game, and you wouldn't necessarily get the same sequences in a specific order. Obviously, it was completely and utterly overshadowing any other arcade game because of the graphics was effectively an animation done by Don Bluth, a person that used to work for Disney. So you can imagine the animation quality would have been very, very high. He apparently left Disney to form his own company, which of course is the company behind the characters and story for this game. Now, this of course is the Amiga version of Dragon's Lair with the later added expansion Escape from Singe's Castle, and this version was done by Readysoft. Now, technically, the Amiga could possibly have produced a similar level of animation as the arcade game, but then it would have been delivered on 600 floppy disks instead of the 6 it came on. With the expansion, of course, which was another 5, so a total of 11 floppy disks. With that in mind, it's easy to imagine that certain decisions had to be made in order to make the game remotely playable on a home computer. And in that regard, I would say that this game definitely begs for a hard drive. It is entirely possible and not necessarily horrible to play it from floppy drive, but without the hard disk, it's not exactly the same. If you look at the interface, you can see we have certain options. We have the option to play on easy, medium, and hard. That basically defines how much of the game you will see. You have to play it on hard in order to see the full game. And then you have the various different options for to play with or without sound, or having command prompts. Effectively, this game is one huge QTE or quick time event sequence, if you want to be pedantic about it. And the key prompts or the prompt thing will give hints to what you might want to do with your controller, because effectively you will have the joysticks for main directions: up, down, left, right, or the fire button, and those are the choices you have to make on the different scenes based on what's happening. I will showcase first the first few scenes of the game with the prompt on, just to give you an indication of how it looks like and how the game looks and sounds. And then afterwards I will be showing without it, just for a reference point. We start off by falling through a hole in the bridge, and we press the fire button in order to slash at tentacles even with our sword, and then quickly move up in the joystick in order to climb out of the bridge, hop back up on the bridge even. And then it goes into the next sequence. You have the option to drink a potion or go through the door. If you don't do anything, the game will just, okay, you are drinking the potion. And of course, as you can see, that will instantly kill you. The game tends to flash certain objects to indicate that you may want to interact with that in some sort of way. If it's furniture or similar, it's usually an indication that you should move in that direction. And if it's something trying to curl around you or attack you or something, you may want to consider hitting the fire button to slash your sword. Let's talk plot, because of course a game like this will have a plot. A princess has been kidnapped, and our hero, Dirk the Daring, or whatever you call him, that's what he's called. Dirk. Yeah, yeah, and he's daring. Very daring, as you can see. It's quite clearly, he's very, very daring. Regardless, he wants to go and rescue her because he is so daring. And in order to do that, he has to navigate Singe's castle. And once he has finally achieved the goal of rescuing the princess from the dragon, because we got the expansion on it, he also has to escape. Because, of course, what you don't see is the fact that the princess is getting kidnapped yet again. So, on the way out, he has to free her one more time. Because game plots. Let us talk graphics and sound and all that good stuff. And if you don't know of the arcade original, this game will probably look perfectly decent. The animation quality is okay. The graphics themselves are perfectly fine, but for those of us who have experienced and played the arcade original, they are just not in the same league. Probably be a bit naive to expect a game that was effectively released on a pseudo DVD could possibly be remade on a home computer, only taking up 6 floppy disks. So in that regard, I suppose I can't be too critical about it. It's definitely not ugly, but I just feel it's a bit tame compared to the original material. The sounds sound like they are taken from the arcade original and redone for the Amiga, and while they are okay as such, I think they are a bit too coarse for my liking. The gameplay, it is what you would these days call a massive QTE sequence or QuickTime event. You see a certain thing flashing up on the screen, and then you push your joystick in that direction, or your character is getting enveloped by something, and you press the fire button in order to draw your sword, and then you press another time in order to slash your sword. That kind of thing. There's no direct influence of the player outside of making sure that the sometimes almost frame perfect timing is hit using the proper direction. So the gameplay is somewhat limited, not necessarily unenjoyable, at least until you've played the game fully once. Then there's probably not an awful lot to come back for, but it's definitely worth experiencing or seeing someone else play it. Overall, it was quite a task to try and replicate such a famous arcade on home computers, and Readysoft should have a certain amount of credit for taking on the huge task of trying to. But because of the way they have set it up, the load interface, where when you play the game, every single time you complete a sequence, you have to go back to that screen. Having the option to bypass that screen and say, you know what, I am accepting the fact that I'm playing one game with no save options, no load options, no nothing. I just want uninterrupted gameplay. I don't want the game to throw me back to that screen every single time, but it does it between every single sequence, and in certain areas, because it needs to fetch more data, mid-sequence it will send you back to that screen, which is very, very disruptive, and it completely and utterly destroys any immersion the game may have. I know it's a buzzword, but I will use it because this is an interactive story. If you cannot get your head and heart around it, then the game is not going to give you anything. Now, don't get me wrong, it probably sounds like I'm absolutely slashing this game, and I don't necessarily intend to. But in order to look at a game like this with a critical eye, you have to accept the fact that there are certain things that are not quite up to par. The animation sequences, while okay, feel very, very abrupt because of the semi-randomness of certain sequences. The the gameplay story can feel like it's not connected. It can feel very, very random, and it's it is more a showcase than an actual game, even though you do have some sort of input and some sort of influence. And of course, the game contains fail states you can easily game over. So it definitely qualifies as a game, but it can feel like it lacks a cohesiveness in order to bind it together into one proper game story thing. On that note, to showcase my point, but also to give people a chance to actually see the game, I have completed the game, all 22 scenes, and they will be cross-faded together. I will only cut out the interface screen so you don't ever have to look at it. And I've been making sure that the crossfades are very, very tight. The sequence you see at the beginning of every single animation sequence where the skeleton even builds up to the daring, that is a part of the sequence. I sort of wanted to cut it, but at the same time I didn't, because it starts the animation sequence while the character of Dirk is being built, and I didn't want to cut into the sequences themselves, so I have left that animation sequence in every single clip. Another thing to bear in mind, and that is somewhat important, is the fact that because I do not talk over the gameplay, I have not edited the sound levels. Somewhat, but not as much as I do on videos I talk over. So expect the volume to be somewhat higher in that part of the game, or that part of the video even. So just be pre-warned about that. Overall, I think Dragon's Lair is. I don't hate it, but I don't like it. Uh, I enjoyed playing through it. I enjoyed completing it, but I was also glad that it was done, because it got very, very frustrating towards the end, because certain timings are so incredibly tight. The absolute final sequence, you need multiple inputs, and they have to be spot on. 3, 4, 5 in a row, almost frame perfect, to use a speedrunner term. And that specific bit starts to get rather annoying after a while. But anyway, I will leave it up to you to decide whether you like it or not. Once I'm done here, I will be heading into the completion of A Dragon's Lair, Singe's Castle, and if the story seems convoluted, there's nothing I can do about it. That is the sequence it gave me the scenes in, and that is what I'm showcasing. So from a commentary point of view, I'm going to say thanks for watching and take care. See you next time. Bye bye for now.